Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko, known to the world as famed actress Natalie Wood, starlet of the silver screen. She helped build Hollywood. She led some of our most iconic films, Miracle on 34th Street, Rebel Without a Cause, West Side Story. But what happened on that fateful weekend in 1981? She took a cruise, a vacation, with Robert Wagner and Christopher Walken, and she brought along her captain, Dennis Davern. Was it an accident, or was Natalie Wood murdered? Join me today exclusively on Cinemills TV as I kill the killer of Natalie Wood.
We have Chris Todd coming back around. Thank you.
Thanks for having me again.
It's always a pleasure as we go into the Natalie Wood murder mystery or death mystery. The LA County coroner does believe that it was ruled an accidental death. Explain to us first the significance of Natalie Wood as it relates to the pantheon of actresses in Hollywood.
Natalie Wood is not only iconic, we all kind of grew up with her, right? She was a child star. Some considered her possibly the best female child actress next to Shirley Temple. Miracle on 34th Street was a big hit. She also did Driftwood. She was brilliant, and her mom had coached her and kind of, brought her along, and they knew they had a star on their hands. And she went on very young, Rebel Without a Cause. Rumors that she had an affair with the director. He was like 40 years old, Nicholas Ray. And she was like 16 years old. She wanted to work with James Dean. And she was really hot for those years. Her movies back to back were just like really big time brand name films. And she did West Side Story. She was in over 40 films. So at the end of her career, being in Brainstorm with Christopher Walken, which they were filming at the time of her murder, she really is not only a household name, she was a 3-time Academy Award nominee, okay? She had a good sense of humor. She accepted like the Worst Actress Award one time. So she was a unique individual, and I've had a lot of people come to me over the years and be like, I'm in love with Natalie Wood. Can you do something with Natalie Wood's case? And I've actually been on this, just to say, I've been on this for 8 years.
Right. And I know you've done a lot of source investigation as it relates to meeting with their captain, Dennis Davern, and so forth. But, her iconic image in Hollywood, at 18, she ends up marrying Robert Wagner, known as RJ. They fell in love and they got married. And during that marriage, was it smooth sailing or was it rocky, War of the Roses between them? How would you describe that marriage?
Not compared to the second marriage. They actually get married again, which is very unique, okay? That does not happen very often. Their first marriage, I think, lasted about 4 to 5 years. They separated and then were divorced a year later. And then she went on to date other famous people. So I wouldn't say it was super choppy, but obviously there was some issue that it didn't work out.
And she's been romantically linked during their breakup to Warren Beatty,
Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, the who's who, other producers, directors. And somebody had made a comment too that a lot of Natalie Wood's friends were men and that she didn't have many female friends and acquaintances.
Now, do you believe that may have put a wedge in the relationship at that time?
I think they truly were in love. They were a magical couple. There were some ups and downs that Dennis Davern did talk about, but nothing like that happened on the Thanksgiving weekend in 1981. That was just a freak show.
Christopher Watkin, Captain Davern, and Natalie Wood set sail to Catalina.
Yep.
And it's a Friday evening.
Friday, yep, 27th of November.
And when they basically get into port over at Catalina, they go to a bar, right?
I think they're going to move this boat to Isthmus Cove. So I believe they're at Avalon at first.
Okay, so they're at Avalon, and when they get landside, reports have said that they were drinking intensely at the bar. They were getting just wasted, right?
Well, and mostly the first night, Friday night, is drinking, marijuana, quaaludes. They're partying and hanging out together. Most of it is done on the boat. And the important part of the first night is going to be this argument and this kind of blow up, which is a prelude to Saturday night, which is the night of the murder. So a lot of stuff's going on. Basically on Friday night, Robert Wagner wants to move the boat for some reason. And this is a lot of speculation about why is he moving the boat. He's trying to move it over to Isthmus Cove, which is, they call it two harbors. There's two harbors on each side. This is near where Natalie will be found at Blue Cavern Point. So Natalie's arguing with him about why are we moving the boat at night? You're, 3 sheets to the wind, okay? They're all having a good time, supposedly. And I think Robert Wagner was kind of flexing his muscle to be like, I'm the captain of this boat. And he called his dinghy the Valiant, the Prince Valiant and stuff. And he wore the hat and they had matching coats. And so, he was the alpha male of this trip. And I think he was trying to flex his muscle. And Dennis talks about that a lot too, of why are we moving the boat, Chief? What are we doing? Natalie actually, with Dennis Davern, leaves the boat and goes to a hotel on the mainland just on a whim. She can't stand to be near her husband.
So they're fighting, and they're just not having a pleasure cruise. This is becoming a problem.
It's very tense.
She didn't want him moving the boat because he was just everybody.
And he's arguing with Walken about politics and Vietnam and and there's always this tension, which I love as part of a story or project too, is, Robert Wagner was the big TV star, Heart to Heart, right? He was in some movies, but that's not his household name, was Heart to Heart with Stephanie Powers, okay? Chris Walken is the Academy Award winner for The Deer Hunter with Michael Cimino, okay? That is considered a top 10 film of all time. And his performance with De Niro, with the Russian roulette, it may never happen again. So you got him, as you like to say, he's hotter than fish grease. I think there's automatically this jealousy with this is the big movie guy. He's younger than me. He's going to get any role he wants. My wife is flirting with him and she loves him. He's a genius. He's brilliant. Oh my God. You could imagine. And he's saucing them back. They have sex in the movie. They're married in the movie. They're under this sheet in this cute little scene.
It's been told that Natalie Wood and Watkin go up to a bar, and they're sitting kind of very close to each other, and they're just chumming it up.
This is Saturday. They go shopping, and they go to meet them for dinner. So they go off on their own, and that's when Wagner and Davern move the boat, okay? So while he sends them, why don't you guys go, But I think it's important to talk about Friday night a little bit more and about what happens on the hotel. It's very important.
Tell us more about Friday
Sure.
night.
Friday night, obviously tense situation. It's windy, it's rainy, the weather's terrible. It's November, it's late November. And basically Natalie explodes enough to say, Dennis, get me off this boat. We're going ashore. They go ashore, they get a hotel. And Dennis Davern spends the last night of Natalie Wood's life on Earth together with her in the bed.
What do you mean? Captain Davern and Natalie are sleeping in the same bed?
Yes. And I think eventually he might go to the floor, but there's a famous line too where she says, keep your jeans on, because he starts to basically get undressed. They're laying in the bed together for some time because they're talking. And it's almost like, no pun, heart to heart. And she actually says she wants to be flown off the island. I want my body flown off this island. There's no planes going. They can't get off. She wants to leave.
So Natalie's pissed off because her and Wagner are just...
He's embarrassing her in front of Walken. And imagine this, why would Natalie Wood leave Chris Walken on the boat with Robert Wagner? That's awkward, right? So that means that's a big fight for you to leave your husband there with, he just met Chris Walken.
It just seems very peculiar that Captain Davern would be in the same bed as Natalie. I mean, that's his client.
He loves Natalie.
Well, it's hard not to love Natalie
And
Wood.
maybe he thought this was his chance. Look at your husband. What a fuck up. You know what I mean? And now he's with her. He's 3 sheets to the wind. She's a little drunk too. They smoked weed too with Walken. I don't know if Natalie did. I know Davern was smoking weed with Walken. They do it again on Saturday. So they take Quaaludes, and Davern brought the Quaaludes to calm everybody down. It's a mess. I look at it as like a play, almost like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, right? The 4 actors like just going this
big egos
to stage, and there's little quibs and jabs, and it's brilliant. It's a brilliant story.
Yeah, it's also a very tragic story. Now, she's kvetching. She wants to get off the island as quick as possible. She's upset with Robert Wagner. He's embarrassed her in front of Chris Walken. It's a mess at this point. What happens next? Does Natalie kind of calm down?
So the next morning, she kind of reconsiders and said, let's go back to the boat. I'm going to make everybody breakfast. They go back. They have breakfast. Things seem to be somewhat mulled over. And then basically they're going to go ashore, Walken and Natalie, and then they're going to move the boat and they're going to stay together. Whether they're plotting something, that was always thought of too. While they're gone, what are Dennis Davern and Robert Wagner talking about while they're not there? Because this Saturday night's going to explode. So they're at Doug's Harbor Reef. There's people that say these people are very intoxicated. Someone supposedly throws a glass against the wall. They didn't know if it was Walken or Wagner. I'm probably going to guess Wagner, but we call this the Last Supper. And there was drinking, and basically, which I thought was interesting, is Davern and Walken get in the dinghy and go back to the boat to get a good bottle of wine that Wagner wants them to get. He's not happy with the wine list, and what he's just twisted. Okay, he's been drinking probably most of the day, as has Davern. Okay, they go back, they smoke marijuana on the dinghy ride back to the Splendor. They get the bottle of wine, they come back, they reconvene at the dinner, and the dinner starts to turn into this sloppy mess.
And you mentioned Davern's been drinking, Captain Davern. He must have had a very cozy relationship with Natalie and RJ, where he was more than just a captain. He was kind of a friend, a hang around.
He was a bodyguard. He watched the kids sometimes.
Yeah.
He was with them for 8 years.
He's kind of a does-all guy for them. Okay.
Like most celebrities have. You need somebody to...
A guy, yeah.
You need a guy to help you, with the public and hold secrets. And he was the captain of the boat. He was a naval guy. That's how they found him. You know what I mean? He was working at a marina, I believe. And Robert Wagner loved him. They loved Dennis. They would never have... he would have worked there 6 months if they didn't like him. Do you know what I mean?
Right. So he had a comfortable relationship where he could drink, party with them, in as much as still be on deck for their needs, whatever they needed. Okay, so they're...
And remember, he's the captain of the boat. That's his responsibility. Of all the passengers on the boat, we're not letting him off the hook. He is partly to blame for Natalie's death.
After dinner, and they're stumbling out of the restaurant.
Literally stumbling.
They get on the dinghy, and they take the dinghy back to...
And the light doesn't work, and they need to use a flashlight to get back to the boat. And Natalie cannot swim, and Natalie's deathly afraid of water. It was prophesied through the gypsy to the mother when she was a baby. The world will know this child's eyes, meaning she will be famous, and to beware of dark water. Everybody knew she couldn't swim. That's where Wagner's going to get exposed too.
So they go back. They get on the dinghy. They head back to the yacht, and more drinking occurs.
They
right?
pop a bottle of wine like right away. It's like right into it again.
And how's the energy among all them?
Bad. They're trying to keep, I think of it like a roller coaster, right? It's like up and down, up and down. They're trying to keep Wagner at bay. They're trying to make it work. They're trying to salvage this weekend. Basically, things get so heated that Robert Wagner just hits his boiling point. He feels like they're flirting so much, Walken and Natalie. He just erupts. He grabs a wine bottle or champagne bottle, whatever it is, and he cocks it back and he yells, "Do you want to fuck my wife, Chris?" And he smashes this in their face. Glass blows all over Natalie and Walken and Davern. They pause and stop, and they are mortified at literally what Wagner just did. Walken gets up, supposedly doesn't say a word, and walks straight into his stateroom. He is done. At that point, Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner, she threatens to divorce him, I believe, at that moment, in front of Davern. They go into their stateroom, and Natalie Wood is beaten by Robert Wagner. And Dennis Davern witnesses it.
And at this point, Natalie's still alive, correct?
They find her earring ripped out of her ear inside the stateroom after. Bruising on her body when they find her. Oh, where'd those come from? So she was assaulted. I'm not saying she didn't fight back, but she's conscious, she's not unconscious in that stateroom.
What happens next?
They spill out onto the back deck, okay? And Davern sees this. He is an eyewitness to this. And he doesn't say it in the beginning. And he holds this for decades. And it festers, and the guilt, right? They spill out to the back deck, and the argument ensues and even ramps up. He turns up the music because he doesn't want to hear it.
Are there other boats moored
There
around?
are. And we can get into Marilyn Wayne's statement of hearing a woman pleading, "I'm drowning, help me, help me." And the only issue I have with that somewhat is if the music's loud and they're yelling, why didn't that wake her up? Why is she only hearing a woman's faint call while she's in the water? So I'm not going to say Marilyn Wayne's fake or real. I'm just putting that out there. We've got to account for that. And sound travels across water, you know this, pretty easily. You don't need to be that close. There are boats moored. They're all moored. They're not in the ocean. They're all kind of anchored or moored, you call it.
Right.
So, and it's exploding, and they're arguing, and Davern turns that music up, pretending like he doesn't want to hear it and doesn't want to face it. And he supposedly looks away. At that time, about 10 minutes goes by, and now he's coming back to say, at that time, she disappears. In that 10 minutes that he looks away and listens to music, "Natalie, Natalie." You see what I mean? He's torn. He doesn't want to see her get hurt either,
Explain to us why the dinghy was basically untied from the side of the boat, the yacht.
The dinghy's tied up. It's not untied. The dinghy's tied to the boat at this time.
Captain Davern mentions it's
already
double tied, right?
It's already tied up.
Okay.
So with Wagner and Natalie on the back, the argument is going. Now I believe, my postulation through my theory, through my years of dealing with these people, in this case, deep dive the whole way, there are two scenarios. He either punches her or chokes her, knocks her unconscious, and puts her in the water. Then lets the dinghy go to make it look like she's going ashore, like she did on Friday night. Or, which I tend to believe is the real story, he says, "You want to go ashore? Go ahead." There you go, into the water. That's when she yells, "Help me, I'm drowning." And Marilyn Wayne and her husband and her son, they hear a woman say, "I'm drowning, please help me." And at that time, Wagner, they hear a man in a slurred voice go, "Don't worry, darling, we're coming to get you." And he never goes to get her. And where's Dennis Davern at this moment? She then now starts to drift out into the ocean. I believe Robert Wagner releases the dinghy to help her. I'm going to give him an out. He sets that dinghy free, give her a chance, right? Here you go, sweetie. Here you go. You want to go ashore like last night? Go ahead. You do it yourself. And he can't turn back. The anger, he's seeing red. He's fuming. He can't turn back. And he watches her begin to drift out into the ocean.
So he was filled with so much rage. Your hypothesis suggests that he is kind of like fight for your life.
He's given her, like, it's his wife. It's the mother of Courtney. They have one child together. Natasha was from another marriage with for Natalie. I think, just putting myself in that marriage situation, fighting with my wife, I don't think Robert Wagner wanted to kill her. I don't. I think he was so angry, he threw her in the water. He knew she couldn't swim. This is manslaughter. I won't call it murder one, right? And I think he lets the dinghy go. It's a double whammy. It helps him cover it up. And it also gives her an opportunity. Maybe she'll get back in the dinghy. And if she says, oh my God, my husband threw me in the water, but she's still alive. You know what I mean? It was a fight. Oh, I accidentally pushed her. This guy's an actor, man. These are actors. Some of the best actors in the world. They can get away with it. You don't think they could trick the LASD when they come? I don't know. Where'd she go? I came back. I was in bed. She got up. She heard the dinghy. You'd believe them too.
So Wagner's story states that she went back to her stateroom and the dinghy was pounding on the side of the yacht. And then she went out by herself in a red puff jacket and socks and a nightgown to re-tie the dinghy.
Fitting.
When she could have just hollered for Captain Davern, but...
That's his job. And he's still awake. He's not in bed.
Right.
They say she hits the water a little before 11 p.m. or right around 11 p.m.
You mentioned to me that Captain Davern told you that he requested Robert Wagner to put on a searchlight when it was alerted to him that Natalie was missing.
Right away, he's saying we need to put the searchlight on.
And what did Wagner say?
And Wagner grabs his arm and says, stop, have a drink, and pours scotch.
So why wouldn't Wagner want to put on a searchlight?
Because he's at the point of no return. He's that angry. He knows now, and remember, he's completely intoxicated, okay? So I can't say exactly what he's thinking, but she's drifting out, okay? She's gone. He cries to him and says, she's gone, she's gone, she's gone. Why isn't he calling the Coast Guard? Why aren't you calling? He doesn't call to the land. He doesn't even call the Coast Guard. He calls to land, to the radio or to the restaurant, to somebody at 1:30 a.m. Someone's missing from our boat. He doesn't say her name. Someone, the mother of your children, one of the most famous actresses of all time, you called someone. And I want to tell you this real quick too. Later on, they ask him, one of the rescuers or the citizens of the island, when they find Natalie or they're looking for her, I'm not sure if they've already found her or right before. He says, well, you know, Natalie's probably went party hopping. She must have taken the dinghy out by herself. She's party hopping because that's the type of woman she was. Wow. That's what he said.
Do you believe Natalie would, on her own volition, hop in a dinghy and head to shore? It's just, or is that totally out of her?
She never drove the dinghy. She never captained the dinghy. She didn't swim. Davern drove her in the dinghy on Friday night. So, no. And that's where, you know, Wagner tries to keep saying like, oh, she must have taken the dinghy by herself. She never rode it herself at all. That's why he gets caught with in these lies. And to say that about Natalie Wood, to say about your wife, oh, she might have went and hooked up with other people, so we're supposed to believe that she got in a dinghy and rode to random other boats because she wants to hook up with other men. Think about that. And if you're the police and the investigators, you believe him? The people told the cops that he said that.
Now, when he alerted the harbor master at 1:30, saying that someone's gone missing, was there...
He doesn't get the harbor master. He gets, like, they come out. It's now, and it takes an hour for them to come out. Doug Oden and or Doug Bombard, they come out, okay, at like 2:30. Okay. So 3 hours have gone by pretty much here.
Okay. And now the search is continuing into
They're
the morning.
searching themselves. Oh,
Right.
looking around the boat. They're in a dinghy. They're trying to look around. The guy, Roger Smith, says, I think they wanted to be the hero.
Was the dinghy found adrift or no?
They found the dinghy eventually, yeah. It's kind of close to her body, I believe.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where it is found, though.
Okay. Now, she was found the next morning, right?
She's found about 7:45 a.m.
So, Chris, Doug Bombard pulls Natalie Wood out of the water, and her body is not, as you said, in rigor mortis. It's almost as if she was deceased very recently.
She's soft, she's limp. They talk about the ring on her finger, pulling the ring off. I didn't know in the beginning, I really felt that Robert Wagner had either knocked her out or choked her, where she was in the water unconscious. And there were other things that showed that that was possible, okay? I'm not gonna go into all those parts. But after they did these affidavits, they signed these affidavits, a couple key witnesses, and one was Roger Smith, who was there when Natalie was found. He starts looking for her at like 5 a.m. They don't even call the Coast Guard till 3:30 in the morning. They force Robert Wagner to call the Coast Guard at about 3:30 in the morning. Doug Bombard and Doug Oden insist he calls the Coast Guard. He wasn't even gonna call at all. So then the body's found at 7:45-ish. So this is hours still later. My point is this. Through the affidavits, through the research, the deep dive, and what Roger Smith says, he's a part of the Coast Guard, he's one of the key rescue guys. She may have been drifting, holding on to that lifeline with the dinghy, or trying to climb in. They find these nail scraping marks on the dinghy, that she's out there drifting for hours, which would line up with the non-rigor mortis, that possibly she had only died a couple hours before that, meaning she drifted out to the ocean and is freezing. I don't know how long she could really stay alive. I think within 2 hours she'd be dead. November in the Pacific. I don't, she's thin, she's small, she's been drinking.
She's not well insulated.
But I will say this, rigor mortis accelerates in heat more than in cold. So she would be more preserved in the cold water. Why didn't Dennis Davern take out the dinghy and get in the dinghy and start looking for her? He knows she's missing. We don't know exactly when Wagner lets it go. Did Davern know that she was gone already and then he sees Wagner release the dinghy? Possibly. I believe, and it's horrific to think, I believe Natalie Wood was floated out into the ocean alone, clinging to either the lifeline or the side of the dinghy as long as humanly possible.
Now, Wagner theorizes, or his statements suggest that while she was trying to secure the dinghy to the side of the yacht, she slipped overboard.
That was always the theory. Even when I was a kid, I was alive when she died, but years later, they always kind of said, oh, she slipped and hit her head. That was always kind of the thought. That's what they fed us.
LA County Coroner Thomas Noguchi describes abrasions on the side of her head.
On her face is an abrasion, and I think the investigator with Davern, they postulate she was dragged across the deck, face down, or her head's off to the side. Is that a strike mark? Did he punch her? I don't think that would leave an abrasion. It's a very serious abrasion on her face. They thought she was dragged across the deck unconscious. Could she wake up in the water? Possibly. There's scenarios, right? What if she woke up in the water? Help me, help. And that's what Marilyn Wayne hears. So a lot of times when I work cases, I try to make a lot of the theories fit together. They can't, but you try to see, well, could that happen in this?
When they asked Robert Wagner to identify the body, what happened next?
He says no. He tells Davern to do it. And they fly off. Walken and him, I believe, take a helicopter off the island. And Davern is left to ID Natalie Wood. And that's when he sees the bruising on her body.
Now, why wouldn't Wagner want to see his deceased wife or just be like, oh my God, you know?
He'll tell you, because here we go with the true crime stuff and what evidence is. He's going to say, I didn't want to see her like that.
Well, yeah, and it goes back to Jean Benet Ramsey. Everybody grieves differently. You know,
Right.
there's no
And he
way.
kisses the coffin at the funeral, and he puts on his little show. They're already covering it up right away. And then Davern basically is bribed by Wagner to live with them for like over a year in the outhouse in the back. And he puts him on Heart to Heart, and he gets him in the Screen Actors Guild. He starts greasing Davern. And Davern came forward. I will say this, Dennis Davern and Marty Rulli are important, but where are we today in 2024? This woman has received zero justice. And Wagner just walks around like no big deal. He wrote a book, and I'll tell you this right now. When he came forward with Natasha and HBO did this documentary, and what I realized, and this is going to relate to all my other cases and the censorship that they've done to me in Hollywood, when I look at the dates of all the articles and all the stuff they kept saying about Natalie Wood, it's 2 to 3 years after I already came forward. They blocked me again, and it was really hard the last week to research this and to see it again. People Magazine, Daily Mail, NBC, all these people. I'm like looking at the dates, and I even told one of my partners, you know, I keep seeing the dates are 2 to 3 years after. They go, of course, because they did the same thing, man. You know they did that. They blocked you. I'm like, I was telling them all the real stuff while this was going on and before that. And then I go to them after that. So I like bracket it. I'm telling them before, then they start coming on the shows and they're back. And then I'm telling them after and still nothing. Why can't I talk?
The thing when an investigation occurs is witness testimonies are taken, right? And Captain Davern, Christopher Watkin, Robert Wagner, they all had the same story of events.
They kept it all kind of together. That's collusion, right? Walken doesn't even say anything, okay? And there's an interview of him on YouTube, you can go watch it, where they ask him about that weekend and he just looks like he just saw a ghost and he doesn't know what to say. He didn't come forward, Wagner didn't come forward, and Davern didn't come forward at first till many years later, and even they get caught on a hot mic. Marty Rulli and Dennis Davern in like 92, 93, somewhere in there. Oh, we can't tell them how she got in the water. We got to go write a book and make a bunch of money.
Well, therein lies an issue. Is Captain Davern trying to profit off a sensationalized story?
They wrote a book. I don't think they did it for money. They wanted to make a movie. I brought a producer and an agent to them. We tried to do it. We wrote screenplays, we wrote treatments, we wrote act breakdowns. We did all that stuff. It just didn't happen. And to be honest, I'm very surprised today that nobody's made a movie about Natalie Wood's murder. I am like shocked that that's never happened. They do things about the scummiest people and criminals and drug smugglers. Eventually, Natalie Wood's murder movie needs to be made for her final goodbye.
Well, let me ask you this. Lana Wood, Natalie's sister, what does she believe happened?
She believes, she said it, it's on the record, that Robert Wagner killed Natalie Wood. She didn't say that at first. It took many years. She tries to confront Wagner at dinner. She is very driven to prove that Robert Wagner killed Natalie Wood.
Has it shifted from an accidental killing to a much more, is he a person of interest or a suspect in this now?
Well,
what is the LA County Sheriff's position on this?
And I'm going to let the air out of your balloon a little bit. He was a person of interest. He was a suspect. Marty Rulli got the case reopened with Dennis Davern in, I believe, 2011. It was officially reopened, and I believe it was Locke Schmannen who was the coroner still from the OJ story. But I'm going to tell you this. There was a recent press article about a year ago or 2 years, somewhere in there, that said this case is closed. It is officially right now, that case is closed.
You believe that Natalie Wood was murdered maybe in a manslaughter kind of situation?
Murder 2. They had Wagner, and I spoke to one of the detectives, and they went on Discovery and did a bunch of talking heads on there with them. And I had the conversation. And he kept saying, we got her with Wagner on the back of the boat. We don't have her getting in the water.
And it's not what you know, it's what you can prove in the
Correct.
court.
And their hands are tied. I mean, come on, it's 43 years this November.
43 years, and you're suggesting that even if it did go all the way to the box, it would be a wobbler at the very best. It would be
Absolutely. And the jury, I mean, do people really strive to get so much justice for celebrities? We saw what happened on my other case. Did people start banging down my door for Ron and Nicole? No. Oh, Natalie Wood. Some people, oh, she's a brat. She's a rich, entitled white woman. And I hope someday someone does make a film about her as her final goodbye. She never got that. She never had justice. And I think it's important for her to be able to rest in peace.
Chris, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you for having me again.